Today on 2010 Speed we're going to talk about alignment of the rear derailleur, the various bolts that help in that alignment, and when you need to check it and under what circumstances. There are 3 limiting screws on the rear derailleur. The high limiting screw, which limits the movement of the derailleur pulley outward. The low limiting screw, which limits the movement of the pulley wheel inward. Think of the high limiting screw as moving the pulley wheel around the highest gear or the smallest cog, and the low limiting screw as moving the pulley wheel around the lowest gear or largest cog. There's also something called a B screw, which controls the amount of spacing between the large cog and the pulley wheel. With a good derailleur, you shouldn't have to adjust the limiting screws once they are set, with the following exceptions: replacing the derailleur, noise in the smallest cog, noise in the largest cog, poor shifting, or some kind of fall or trauma to the bike if it falls over, in which case you're going to have some trouble shifting or hear some noise. Take a look at the pulley wheel when it's on the smallest cog and largest chainring, and see that the center of the pulley wheel lines up exactly with the center of the chain just above it in the smaller cog. Next, place the chain on the largest cog in the small chain ring and check that the pulley wheel lines up perfectly with the center of the chain above. If we're experiencing noise in the small cog or large cog of the cassette, or we're having difficulty shifting into the small or large cog, first thing to do is release the wheel, pull it up tightly, and reset it like that. And then check that the wheel is true, not out of alignment by spinning the wheel. Sure as the wheel spins, the spacing between the rim and the brake pad is even. Check this on both sides. Now we know the wheel has been trued properly, and we've already made sure it sits well in the drops. Next, let's recheck the pulley wheel and chain in the small cog and large cog of the cassette. After checking that the rear wheel is well seated in the drops and is not out of alignment, we still notice that the upper pulley wheel is way to the right of the chain above it in the small cog big chain ring. We can make a temporary adjustment using the limiting screw for the high gear, that is the smallest cog, turning it inward clockwise, until it perfectly lines up with the center of the chain above it. In this particular case, we would need to also at some point take this down to the shop, have them check the hanger on which the derailleur sits to make sure it's not bent and whether they can bend that back straight again. We also need to repeat the process by putting the chain in the largest cog, small chain ring, and check that the pulley wheel, the top pulley wheel, lines up with the center of the chain. If it does not, we'd have to make an adjustment to the limiting screw for the lowest gear, largest cog, and turn this either clockwise or counterclockwise in order to get the pulley wheel to line up with the center of the chain. Check the alignment of the rear derailleur. Anytime you hear noise or a difficulty shifting into the large or small cog, or if the bike accidentally falls over while it's leaned against the wall and lands on the derailleur, or you have some kind of fall. In part 2, we'll talk about the B-screw on the derailleur and what that does, and we'll go over a little bit more on the barrel adjuster of the rear derailleur.